All right, if everybody can make sure that you're muted. I see one person that's not, and I can't quite help you out with it. So just everybody check your settings. In the meantime, thank you. Welcome. See here. Welcome to Library 102. Today's Monday, April the 10th. It's been rescheduled. This event was originally March 28th, which was the day after the Covenant school shooting. And out of respect for those families and for what had happened here in our community, then we canceled it for that day. And this is the rescheduled day. So that's why a March initiative is happening in April. But thank you for tuning in, because I have been waiting on this event to write the library true false quiz, because I think that this presentation is going to have just crucial information that I couldn't proceed without. So I'm very excited to open it and then hand it over to Amanda Price, who has a ton of practical information for parents. And then Dan Kleinman will take over from there, talking about the American Library Association and associated topics. And then we'll talk to you briefly about what your legal options in Tennessee are, and then we'll close it out. So for those who don't know me, my name is Robin Steenman. I'm the chair of the Williamson County chapter. I'm a mom of 3. I've been married for 12 years, and I'm an Air Force veteran. I was a pilot before this job. Library 102 is part of our 2022 to 2023 school year for parents initiative, in which we're just breaking down those crucial issues 1 month at a time, one topic per month, and making it a little bit more easily digestible, bite-sized portions. So when we started in September and that arrow was at the top of the page, it seemed, it was a long way to go. And now here we're approaching more towards the bottom. We've made it through all of these previous issues, and now we're focused on the sexual material in school libraries. And we're talking graphic sexual material in school libraries. The vernacular would be porn in the library, which is what's most often said on social media and around. And when we mean that, it's visual. So, like a softcore porn, but usually hand drawn so that they're skirting the actual
They draw it.
I'm sorry. Everybody please mute. All right, go back. So there's visual, and then there's the written. So the written is more like erotica or just highly inappropriate content. And then there's the visual stuff that's usually hand drawn, but still highly inappropriate, very graphic, especially for kids. And we're talking elementary, middle, and high school. So most parents had no idea. In 2021, I had no idea when somebody first approached me about, quote, porn in the library. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. I thought there's no way. And then parents across the country started bringing this issue to light by reading the materials in front of school board meetings. And that happened in November 2021 in Williamson County. And the school board video person started to mute the parents. And the reason that she gave was, well, I'm afraid of getting, being in violation of FCC obscenity law. And somehow they just failed to see the irony of that. So when also we're talking about this graphic sexual content, it's typically very dark in nature. Most of it is rape, a lot of incest, a lot of pedophilia, abuse, sodomy, and gender indoctrination. And then you bring in the American Library Association, which wants to rebrand these topics as culturally diverse and inclusive materials. It normalizes these topics for children as young as kindergarten. It's providing a gateway to pornography and pornography addiction, which is a real problem because teenage porn addiction, teenage erectile dysfunction, those are skyrocketing in this country. In Europe, teenage erectile dysfunction is at 30%.
Not sure what that
Good
means.
Lord, I don't know.
All right, somebody's going to have to mute, please.
Ooh,
you have to mute? Where's your mute?
Okay. All right. And also, you know, as this is a gateway for porn addiction, then, you know, as we found in Library 101, when you start viewing pornography and you become addicted, it literally rewires the pathways in your brain, making you desire or crave more and more hardcore content. So in this country, the demand for rape porn and child porn are also skyrocketing. The Gale Library Database and the student Chromebooks both provide access to pornographic content right on the school property. The American Library Association curates and promotes an annual rainbow book list, which it pushes for children kindergarten through 12th grade. And organizations such as the ALA, which includes the Right to Read Foundation and Libraries Transforming Communities, those are all the same, it's all the ALA, as well as GLSEN, which is a gay, lesbian, straight education network. And Scholastic are, quote, donating books to school libraries, which helps to get those rainbow book lists onto the shelves. And Mr. Kleinman will cover that in greater detail. So those are the high points of the issue that we're dealing with, and we're approaching it from multiple directions. How do we do that? Well, in the book club, we read The Porn Myth, and that really pulled back the curtain on when somebody views porn or this kind of graphic sexual content, what is occurring in the brain? How are they getting addicted? How is it affecting them? How is it going to affect them in the future? The book was really instrumental in giving us the bigger picture, the 30,000 foot view on the problem. We did Library 101 on March 20th, following with Library 102 tonight. We'll follow with the True False quiz for parents, where you can, it starts with the fallacies and the falsehoods, and then it works backwards towards the truth. A Sunday post, and then the library toolkit is live on our website, but it is not yet complete. So for Library 101, that was quite an event. Miss Victoria Jackson, former Saturday Night Live fame, read all of those books for over an hour. And at the end of it, you can see in the picture, she broke down. She got teary-eyed because it was just emotionally exhausting for her to go through all of that content. And I encourage you to watch Library 101. We had people in our audience with hands over their ears. Some left. We had 5 to 6 standing in the lobby just waiting for it to end. And some were in tears. That is how graphic these are, just visually, and the words on the written page with these dark themes. These are the books that she read. And these are their ratings. We had 4 3s, 8 4s, and 2 5s. And Amanda Price is going to cover exactly what those numerical ratings mean in her presentation. So which one of those books are in Williamson County School Libraries? These. Push at the bottom right corner has an asterisk because it was at Ravenwood High School and mysteriously vanished from their shelves, database wise. And then all of these books are in Williamson County, in Tennessee schools across the state. So the questions that Library 101 did not cover, Library 101 was over 2 hours long, but you can't cover everything. These issues are so multifaceted that it really takes 2 sessions to cover them. So what we didn't cover is, well, are those books in your specific child's school? What about the Gale Online Library Database? What about the Chromebook? What rights do you have as a parent under Tennessee law? How are the other counties handling this? Who puts the books on the shelves? How do you get them off the shelves? And who and what is the American Library Association? To help answer that question, we have Amanda Price. She's the chair of Moms for Liberty in Wilson County, Tennessee, and we are so thrilled to have her here.
Well, hello. I'm just really, really thankful, Robin, that you were able to pull this together. Thank you so much for inviting me. I have a unique experience working in Wilson County schools with special needs students. So I had the ability to access Chromebooks every day because I had to learn how to use the different apps and websites that they use so that I could teach my student how to use them. And so this is very familiar with me. Also having 6 kids myself, I've had a lot of practice with this. So I've learned some things and I'm gonna show you some of the stuff that I found. So let's get that pulled up with my screen. And start from the beginning. All right. So as you can see, Robin's done quite a lot. The Williamson County chapter has gone through quite a bit of difficult topics, and I've been learning every step of the way. But my focus in Wilson County has, for whatever reason, we've been focused heavily on the sexually explicit material in libraries. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how we came across it. A lot of people ask me, well, how did you find out about these in the first place? Well, there's a Facebook page. Actually, it's kind of boomed into quite a few Facebook pages at this point across the nation, but Mary in the Library, and it was created by a teacher, I believe, who came across some of these books and wanted parents to know, hey, this is on the shelves and you might not know about it. I was shocked to find out about it because I have, out of my 6 kids, 4 of them actually love to read, maybe 5 like to read regularly on their own. And as you know, just one person, there's no way I can screen all those books before they get them from the shelves and go through them. And so I've just been trusting the system and not really worried about it until recently when I found that these books are not what they look like. So I found this poem. I thought it was pretty telling. If you're anything like me, when you read a book, you absorb the book. This poem, I opened a book. I opened a book and in I strode. No, nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak. I've slipped on the ring. I've swallowed the magic potion. I've fought with the dragon, dined with a king, and dived in the bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends. I shared their tears and laughter and followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. That's by Julia Donaldson. So, a book inside me. When we go through some of the content in some of the books that are in the libraries right now, it can almost bring me to tears to think about kids walking around with this kind of content inside them. This poem is beautiful. I love it. But it's just really overwhelming in the age of technology and information, how much parents have on their plates trying to reasonably monitor all the content that's already out there provided to their children. And to think that we have to weed out constantly all of these maladaptive thoughts that have been integrated into all of these different media platforms. And so many of them are deeply rooted in seriously dangerous ideologies. It's just overwhelming to think about all the stuff that kids are coming across, and nobody thought about the books in the libraries, but we need to start thinking about that. This is from Mark 7:21 through 23. It is, because it is from within, from the human heart, the evil thoughts come, as well as sexual immorality, stealing, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, cheating, shameless lust, envy, slander, arrogance, and foolishness. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. So we know it's possible to watch and hear and read material without embracing it or absorbing it as fact. We want to train our children how to do that, to think critically and read opposing views and a diverse sources of literature. Most parents instinctively know that kids and some young adults have yet to fully master this skill. Books are written for different reasons, and those reasons may or may not translate successfully to the reader. It just depends on the reader, it depends on the intent of the author. Parents have to wrestle with both the intentions of the author and the developmental capacity of their child to apply those intentions in a healthy and productive way. This shouldn't be equated with wrapping them in bubble wrap or keeping them out of society and entirely, but it shouldn't be equated with book banning or book burning either. And we've been accused of that quite often these days. But parents have a right to be informed about the content of the books that are given to their kids, and they need to be able to filter it as they see fit. And I know that there are laws that prevent the distribution of sexually explicit material to minors. So why are books a special exception to this rule? It's weird. The more you dig into it and the more you look into it, how books seem to have a special pass, and we're trying to figure out why that is. Content ratings and advisory labels ensure that parents can maintain some level of informed consent as consumers. So why are there no content ratings on books? It's in every other form of media. Dr. Luther King said he dreamed of a day that his 4 children would live in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And most of us are diligently taught and we've applied this dream in the upbringing of our children. Similarly, it has been said that you can't judge a book by its cover. You have to consider the content. But is it reasonable to expect parents to know the content in every book on every shelf in a library? Content ratings have been implemented for all other forms of media. Like I said, on behalf of parents that are concerned about content, what happened with the books? According to the American Library Association, rating systems appearing in the library catalogs or discovery systems are in opposition to intellectual freedom principles. The ALA assumes that individuals don't want or need direction in making decisions about the materials or resources they use. They assume content ratings infringe on the rights of individuals to form their own opinions about the information that they consume. The ALA believes that libraries' explicit and implicit adoption, enforcement, or endorsement of these rating systems violates the Library Bill of Rights and may be unconstitutional if used to prevent an individual's access to materials or resources. If laws are created to enforce content ratings on books, we can expect the ALAs will pursue legal action, because they have in the past for other reasons related to library content. These are some of the websites that I've been using to find universal book content ratings. Booklook.info, ratedbooks.org, and booklooks.org. And these are unique. They're grassroots underground content rating systems, because we didn't have anything, and parents started to notice the content in library books over the last 2 years, and they're like, there's no warning, there's no label. We need to do something. Parents need to be able to know beforehand if what's in a book, just like if you wouldn't let your kids see a rated R movie. So these have popped up. All books are reviewed by volunteers. The ratings are inspired by the widely accepted Motion Picture Association rating system to provide a means of assessing the appropriateness of a book for a child or a young adult. Not all books reviewed are controversial on these websites. Some books taken as a whole may have mitigating factors that lead to a lower rating. For example, To Kill a Mockingbird, it contains terrible instances of racism that would fit well in the minor restricted or number 3 rating. However, taken as a whole, the book has a positive narrative rebuking racism and contains significant historical value. Therefore, it's assigned a Teen Guidance 2 rating. So
Hey,
that's just,
Amanda,
yes.
I think, did you mean to advance the slide where we could see the ratings?
Not yet. Is
Okay.
it advanced?
No, you're still on book look. I was just at, there
Okay.
you go.
Okay, so yeah, this is Book Looks, or actually this chart is used for all 3 of those sites, the numbers 0 through 5. And you can see that it doesn't have the equivalent rating of a movie, but I can tell you that 0 is basically the same as rated G. 1 is like PG. 2 is PG-13. 3 is rated R. 4 is PG-17, and 5 is NC-17 plus. And you can get a little idea of the different types of content based on the number. So if you are okay with moderate violence or profanity, non-sexual nudity involving genitals, and explicit sexual nudity, that's a 2. It might have some drug or alcohol abuse, or it says explicit sexuality, explicit gender ideologies. So it's basically the same as a PG rating. And so if you allow your child to see a PG movie, then you might consider a 2 for a book if it has a content rating. There are a lot of books that have already been rated at these different websites, but clearly not all books have been rated, and it's a work in progress. And the more people who take this on can actually volunteer and help out to get more books into the system, and they're updating the system, the database, every week, actually. So right now, there are probably about 87 books that I've found so far in Wilson County libraries. I don't know how many are in Williamson County, but that's just right now. We don't know how many are in there total that have graphic, sexually explicit material. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go. And so I try to go back periodically and update my spreadsheet. And I suggest that everybody else do the same. Don't just go searching once and think you found everything, because it's not done. This is just a comparison of the summaries of concerns to kind of give you an idea and establish a reference for the rating system. You'll see To Kill a Mockingbird is on the left, and it says in the summary of concerns, based on the 2 rating, this book contains references and commentary regarding racism, derogatory terms, and explicit violence, and explicit references to sexual assault and battery. And so that 2 would again be the equivalent of PG-13. I think I said PG earlier, so I apologize for that, but 2 is PG-13. And then over to the right, you'll see Push, which has a 5. That's NC-17 plus. And the summary of concerns are: this book has explicit sexual activities, including incest and molestation, sexual nudity, excessive frequent profanity, and derogatory terms, controversial racial commentary, drug use, and violence, including self-harm. So each of these are, when you look up a book, you can click on a link and it'll pull up these forms that you can look through on your own for each individual book, and it'll give you on the first page a picture of the book summary, what the content rating is, and some of the additional information, the author, the ISBN numbers, things like that. So moving on to, I lost my spot, hold on. This is basically some excerpts from each one. So if you're looking for a little bit of each, like quotes from the book, you'll find in To Kill a Mockingbird, it talks about rape very vaguely. I mean, it references it, but it doesn't give a lot of description. And on page 191, it says some N-word raped his girl, and on 213 it says he choked you, he hit you, then he raped you, right? Well, molestation, a little bit different from rape, but in the same sexual abuse category, with a content rating of 5. This is just from one page, number 37. I tried to go back to video, but coming now, rocking under Carl now. My twat jumping juicy, it feel good, I feel shamed. See, he slapped my thigh, like cowboys do horses on TV. Then he squeezed my nipple, bit down on it, I come some more, see you like it. You just like your mama, you die for it. He pull his out and the white cum stuff pour out my hole, wet up the sheets. So that's a 5. And that's in our library. Just to give you a little bit of an idea. These are on the ratedbooks.org. If you wanted to filter according to content rating, you can go under the filter by and just click if you want to look at all 5s, or you can include 4s, 3s, 2s, however you want to do it, and then it'll pull it up by those ratings and give you an idea of which ones, and you can click on those and it'll show you the handouts for each one. We've been using these handouts to notify members in our community. If we find it in our school library, we will print those out, create a binder, show it to our county commissioners, show it to our school board representatives, show it to other parents at the school board meetings, show it at any other meetings that we might be at. I've printed a lot of these binders out, and I don't include all excerpts from all books, but just enough to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and what's been reviewed so far, what has been moved to the mature reading list, what has been left without restriction. Because in Wilson County Schools, we have established in the last year a mature reading list with the idea that kids don't have access to the mature reading list by default, but if their parents wanted them to have access to it, they can click a box at the beginning of the year during the registration process for the year and say, yes, I do want my kids to have access to these books. However, it's a little bit misleading because not all the sexually explicit material is on the mature reading list yet. We haven't got that far. We're only reviewing 2 books per month right now at the school board meetings, and we have 87 on our list. And I think we've gotten through somewhere around, I don't know the exact number, I want to say like 15. And some of those are on the mature reading list, some of them are not. We had 2 removed recently and made national news because of it, but those were both 5 content rating, Jack of Hearts and Other Parts. And if you want to look that up on any of these websites, you can see kind of why the school board was shocked by the material. The other one was Tricks. So they voted almost unanimously to have both of those removed. So this is from booklook.info. It's a little bit different from the Rated Books website. It has it in list format this way. And I like it because you can just click over here on rating, and you can, with you click on the arrow down, it automatically puts all the 5s up at the top, and that's how I've been prioritizing my approach to these books. Which ones do we need to have removed ASAP and which ones can wait a little while? So we've been tackling the 5s first, moving with the 4s next. We haven't got to the 3s yet, but that's a strategy that I recommend using if you're considering contesting these books in your county. Just start with the worst offenders. So the next slide, how do you search your public library in your county? Most schools are using Follett. That is basically the company that provides a variety of educational products to schools, colleges, public libraries. And then Destiny Discover is an interface for students and parents and teachers to use to access all the materials in all of the libraries. Some school districts have Destiny Discover open to the public, so you don't need a username or password. Wilson County is one of those where you don't have to have a username or password. However, if you wanted to put a book on hold or something like that, then you would need your students' account information and to log in and be able to do that. But it's not necessary just to see what's there. So for Follett, you go to gofollett.com and you just choose the state that you're in, and then you find your school. And then you just hit go. That's pretty simple. And if you wanted to go in through your school district website, you can do that as well. This is how you get in through Wilson County. If you go to their main web page, you can go to your child's library account by going to ClassLink on the left-hand side there. Again, that's if you wanted to go through all the other applications available, like Tennessee Electronic Library and things like that, which I'll show you in a minute. And that's our Wilson County login. If you have your student's username and password, if you don't have that, you can just ask a counselor, your child's counselor or teacher. They should be able to give it to you. I have all of mine saved. You can go over to Destiny Discover app. This is a screenshot of my son's page. You can see he set a background filter there for a nice relaxing day on the beach, and Destiny Discover is there on the right. That's what that one looks like. And you'll want to go to the back office, and there's several ways to find that depending on what district you're in. For here, it's under the More tab. It may also be in the menu to the right under collections, like if you're going in under your phone, which I often do. You could also go under an additional catalog heading to find open or back office, and that's what you're going to want to look for so that you can search all the schools in your district. So instead of just searching one school at a time. So here you're looking to go to one location, and you can just change the school, Lakeview Elementary. That's actually where my kids went for a time. And then you can change that to Wilson County School System so that you can see all the schools, elementary all the way up through high school. For example, you can search for Fun Home. You don't have to type in the author's name if you don't want to, but if you do a quick search of just the name, sometimes it helps to put in the author because there's a lot of different books that might pull up under just the words Fun Home. So it helps sometimes, but you don't have to. And here you can see that is not at the originally searched school of Lakeview Elementary. However, there is one copy off-site. So one off-site, if you click on that, it'll show you it's available at one high school in the county. And circled in red is Mount Juliet High School, and it's still currently available at Mount Juliet High School. The last time that I checked, it hasn't been removed yet. And it is probably one of the worst offenders because it is a graphic novel and it does show pictures of sex acts that you would think the librarian would say, okay, maybe that's not a good idea for me to be giving that to the students, but she's not a fan of what she calls book banning. She thinks this is book banning. So she has yet to remove this one. You can also do a search for sold. It was not in the originally searched school. However, it does say that there are 3 copies off-site. So you can go and look at what schools those are available at. Under the site heading here, it's Green Hill High School and Mount Juliet High School, which seem to have the most sexually explicit books in our county. Green Hill High School typically has the majority of them because it is a newer school, and it seems to be a more recent trend just based on what we're seeing with Green Hill High School in comparison to all of the other schools in the county. Green Hill High School had to choose from a binder that was provided from Follett to select a package of what they were going to do to stock the bookshelves, the library shelves. And so the principal had the task of doing that. There's no way he could humanly read every book that was in that package deal. So he just chose one and went with it. And it turned out to have, I think, 76%, something like that, of all of the sexually explicit material that we have in Wilson County. It is in Green Hill High School right now. So for your new schools, that's something that Wilson County School is discussing moving forward. They did recognize that this was a problem with new schools. They're going to have to go through and think of ways to double check, and when they're stocking the shelves, maybe not pick from these packages that Follett offers and do it a little bit differently. So if you're building new schools in your district, then you might want to let them know, hey, let's look through these packages a little bit more carefully moving forward. And I'm curious to see how Wilson County is going to address it moving forward. So this is a Supreme Court decision made. The ALA decided that filtering pornography on the internet blocks access to constitutionally protected speech. So the ALA didn't like when the United States put forth the Children's Internet Protection Act, CIPA, and they decided that they were going to sue the United States because they didn't want to put filters on the internet so that kids couldn't access porn. They thought that that was a violation. The Supreme Court decided that that was not a violation, a constitutional violation, based on the circumstances, and so they can actually put filters on electronics for kids. And if an adult, for whatever reason, decides that they want that filter removed, all they have to do is ask, and then they can look at porn at the library if they wanted to. But I just thought it was interesting that the ALA fought against protecting kids against porn back in 2000. I think this decision was in 2003. Yeah, that's when the Supreme Court decided. So that's something to think about. So even though we have filters on our library electronics now, there's still another issue. So the risky library resources to consider now electronically would be through the Tennessee Electronic Library. That's a virtual library that you can access from your home computer, school computer, smartphone, anywhere with internet connection. I believe it's free. And all students in Wilson County have this app under their student accounts to access it, but you cannot access it just through the Destiny Discover app. So this is something that you would have to log in to your student's account in order to be able to look at. And Gale is something that provides a variety of education databases for educators and students, grades K through 12. The school databases are visually appealing, highly intuitive, and a trustworthy source where students can find vetted, age-appropriate content. So you can find it. This is a screenshot from my son's account right here. TEL is the app. And then you can go into a variety of databases. They actually have quite a few databases for different reasons. And the two that I was concerned with were the general one file. And there was another one, what was it? I think it was gender studies, something like that. So if you click on the one file, before I pull up the next slide, I just want to give you a warning that it is sexually explicit. So if you have kids in the room, maybe you want to not have the screen up, or however you want to go about doing that, but I just want to give you a heads up. So you can search in this database for different words, and if your child doesn't have what is it? Go Guardian is the app for Wilson County that filters words to tell kids if they're searching for something inappropriate. It'll throw up a flag. It'll tell them, hey, don't look at that. That's inappropriate. It won't let you go much further. So, but some kids can stumble across it just by typing in words that you wouldn't think would bring this kind of stuff up. But here I typed in Pornhub, so we would see if it came up. And this was actually through a student account that was not actually on a school issued Chromebook. So the Go Guardian app wasn't active, but if for whatever reason your child wanted to access this information on a different electronic device other than their school issued device, then this is what you would get. So Pornhub, and this is just one article. Pornhub is the Kinsey report of our time. And I'm just recreating the steps that I saw on Porn is Not Education. The website, it's I'll tell you more about that in just a minute, but this is how I learned about this. So these are different screenshots that are in that particular article. And as you can see, they do have it partially blocked off, but the article itself is also sexually explicit, not just the pictures. And so some of the words are, out there. So these are just some of the pictures. And then you can see this particular article about Pornhub talks about the different years that certain things were popular during that year in porn searches. And so 2007 was the year of the MILF. 2008 was the year of squirting. You get the point. So that's just one. If you go to the gender studies database, you'll see that there are other articles. Here's one, The Good Girl's Guide to Porn, that when you pull it up and you go to the bottom, if you follow all the way down and read the article at the bottom, it actually gives additional websites that the child can look into if they like that article, if they want to know more. Jinsey at jinsey.com and her hot lesbian porn at jinseypinkbox.com. Then there's Carlin's amazing sex education at dodsonandross.com. Take to social media and chat about it at hashtag good porn exclamation point. And there's their tags at Juicy Jinsey, and so on down the line. So that's under gender studies. Here's an article that talks about porn to pay for school, which I thought was probably not the best article for kids to be looking at that are going into college. It says some young gay men turn to sex work to pay for school, and spoiler alert, not all of them regretted it. So that's something to consider. And on this particular page, you'll see under the article at the bottom, a link to advocate.com. And that is a live link. So if you click on it, it will take you from this site and open up the Advocate site. Under the Advocate site, there's a tab for photography. And you'll see that Advocate likes to highlight boys, 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 men in the dunes, nude. And it's just one click away to see the nude photos there. So the good news is if your child is accessing this through their school issued Chromebook or laptop, then you'll get a warning like this. So I went in under my son's account and I got all the way to the actual article. And as I was scrolling down on the article, this popped up. Hey there, it seems like the content on this page might be inappropriate. So please remember that your school can monitor what you do on your school issued device. GoGuardian gave this warning for the articles that I just showed you. So that was a relief. And as soon as I found these, I did send an email to my son's principal to say, hey, these popped up. GoGuardian caught them on these websites. They're blocked because of school policy. If you don't have the Parent Guardian app, you will want to download that to your phone, to your lap. I think you can do it on laptop. Actually, I don't think you can do it on laptop. I think it's just a phone app that you can download and put in your child's account information so that you can monitor all of their activity on their device. And this is just an example of how Gale.com had violated school policy. So I sent that to the principal and asked her to please remove those two databases from my son's access. And she was able to do that through the IT department. So any kind of app or website that you don't want your child to have access to, you can contact the IT department and they should be able to handle that for you without issue. And you can also block them directly from the parent app. So for instance, my other son visited YouTube probably about over 200 times in the last 30 days. And I thought, okay, that is not right. So I went and I just blocked YouTube entirely from him being able to access that. Hopefully his teachers are thankful. I'm surprised they didn't do it before me. But that's just one way that the parent app is very useful. So please look into that. If your district doesn't have it, then ask for it because it is necessary, definitely necessary. So that's how you find your database in those different portals. I really strongly recommend that you do your homework. Don't just take my word for it, but look and contact your school, show them what you found. You might find other things that I wasn't able to detect. It's just, we need to be looking through this together because our kids are. You can get the kid's password, your child's password for the databases in your school library. You can use your library card to examine homework databases at your public library. But more importantly, just go ahead and contact your school and state administrators and let them know that this is an issue. Like I said, I contacted the principal of Wilson County Middle School. So that's just like one drop in the bucket, and we all need to be contacting moving forward and letting them know, hey, this is probably not the best thing. And I think before last year it was EBSCO, and then EBSCO got a lot of heat on the information that they were allowing kids to have access to. And so a lot of districts actually got rid of EBSCO and Gale took its place. So Gale was the answer to removing EBSCO. So we need to just keep on looking and don't be afraid to be annoying. Like I said, contact the IT department for your school and ask them to remove your child's access. And then you can copy all the stakeholders, the IT department, the teachers, the librarians, and remind them that this could be a liability for them if they aren't able to do something about that soon. Consider filing complaints against the state educators certifications if this problem doesn't get fixed. Attend board meetings so that you can speak about it and let other parents know about it. Join the wave of parents nationwide that are kicking the porn industry out of their schools. Contact the news and social media. If you can't work with your school district, if they're not hearing you, then tell the media. I mean, why not? And then also remember to contact your legislators because a lot of them don't know about this either. And there are different bills that are trying to come through that are addressing things like that. And so we need to let them know now more so than ever of everything that's going on. And that's it. That's my presentation. And there's a nice little donation QR code. If you are happy with what you found, please help Moms for Liberty Williamson County continue to present information like this moving forward. Every little bit helps for all the speakers. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mandy.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you again. That was an excellent presentation. We will have questions at the end. I know there was a couple of questions that showed up in chat. Let's see. Yes, we can post a donation link. If you just visit our website, I'll have it again at the end. And then there was one question in chat, if you want to answer in chat, Mandy. And then we'll have a round of Q&A at the end. So this issue is at the forefront. Here's one of our favorite congresswomen, and she is speaking passionately about the Parents' Bill of Rights that passed the U.S. Congress.
Of similar Republican legislation that has already passed on the state level. Look at these books that have already been banned due to Republican measures. The Life of Rosa Parks. This apparently is too woke by the Republican Party. Song of Solomon is unacceptable to Republican politics. 40% of banned books have reported are significantly addressing and specifically addressing LGBT issues. To say and talk about government reach and freedom This is a bill, this Republican bill is asking the government to force the outing of LGBT people before they are ready. And talking about the rights of parents in this gallery today, the National Parents Union is here saying, don't do this. I have a letter that I'd like to submit where they are asking the Republican Party to keep culture wars out of classrooms. Our children need urgent and aggressive educational solutions. The American Library Association coming out against this Republican proposal.
So I thought that was interesting. You know, she's opposing the Parents' Bill of Rights, and who's in that whole melee? But of course, the American Library Association. They do not want parents to, one, know what's in the school libraries, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell you what's there and how to find it and verify it. But second, they don't think parents should have any right to have any say over what's in those libraries. So of course, the ALA is 100% passionately against anything to do with parental rights. In fact, in that Supreme Court case, they're talking about nobody should should filter pornographic content from the eyes of children. So moving on, the lovely AOC held up the Song of Solomon and the life of Rosa Parks as examples of, oh, those Moms for Liberty book banners. And here's another couple of examples of books that we've been accused of wanting to ban. And of course, we know that this is not true. I've done several news interviews where they called me up and they were real anxious to meet because they wanted to label me a book banner and talk about all of these classics that I'm against. But of course, we know that's not true. These are not the books. These are the books. And as Mandy showed you on those websites, it's only a small fraction of the books. There's many, 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 many more, and parents just have to get smart, volunteer your time, read a book, submit a book report, help us to maintain the database. But this is a small fraction of the books. Okay, content warning. Before I go forward, this is NC-17 stuff. So an example from Genderqueer. This is not the Song of Solomon. Example from Flamer. This is not To Kill a Mockingbird. Example from It's Perfectly Normal, which was used as a textbook for sex ed in Williamson County Schools previously. More graphic detail. Fun Home. That's not Catcher in the Rye. Let's talk about it. I have that book in my house to use for examples. If reporters come over and they want to talk about Banned Books Week, my response is like, okay, let's talk about Banned Books Week. And I'll take them to the various pages that you're seeing. This book is so cartoony on the front with the let's talk about in the little figures that I am stressed about having this book in the same house as my 8-year-old daughter. I put it way up high because this would scar her for life if she saw these images and read these words. Highly, highly graphic. This is not Huckleberry Finn that we're talking about. So, who's behind all of this? Why has the presence of these books skyrocketed in recent years? Who's putting them on the shelves? Who's curating these lists? And what's their goal? To explain some of this, we have Dan Kleinman. He's the founder of Safe Libraries. I talked to him on the phone a month or so ago. And I said, well, I understand that you started your journey when your kindergarten daughter brought home a highly inappropriate book, and then you started digging, and then you've been at this for 10 years. And Dan's response was, no, I've been at this for 20 years. So he has been aware of this problem far longer than the 2 years that most of us have. And he can give us so much background and history on how this came about and how long it's really been at work in our schools. And I'm so thrilled to have him here. So without further ado, Dan Kleinman, I'm going to stop my share, and Dan, you can take over.
Yay. Hello, everybody. So, hello, Bruce. So I saw you waving. I'm Dan Kleiman from Safe Libraries. I've been doing this for like 25 years, ever since my kid was in kindergarten, and got an inappropriate book about two people skinny dipping on three people or whatever, skinny dipping on a date. For the first time, ooh la la, she said in a lusty voice, something like that. Anyway, the principal removed it from the school, saying it was inappropriate. And that the librarian had it because she's a member of the American Library Association, and that was on the list of approved books for kindergartners. So this is when I got woken up to the situation, essentially. I won't get into more details. And yeah, I have 25 years of experience, but tonight I'm going to have some new information that I haven't said anywhere else, and have only worked on it and published it today just for this meeting that we're in right now. This stuff is even shocking to me. This goes into detail about how and why the American Library Association is doing what it's doing. Why do schools nationwide have these books in them? Well, it's because of the American Library Association. Well, we know that, but why is this? Just why? And part of the reason why is because they have something called the Library Bill of Rights. And the Library Bill of Rights makes it age discrimination to keep kids from inappropriate books, because you're not to judge, you're not their age judge. Okay, this is like an anything goes kind of thing. So you can't make that determination. So if you think this is inappropriate for your kid, then it's your job to keep the kid from seeing it. It's not my job as a librarian to do that. My job is to just give them everything. But what I've discovered is, where does this come from? And I've discovered this from an article written by a University of Houston professor that was just published in January this year. And it goes into detail on to why this is. So what I've done is I've written for tonight's meeting about this article, and I'm going to kind of go through it, sometimes page by page, but sometimes just idea by idea. And I want to tell you that I can't republish the article because I can't republish the article. I'm not allowed to, but if anybody contacts me, I do have a permission to send you a copy just for your own use of, not for republication, of this article. I think you're going to see that it's very important. Now, I've dropped a link in the chat of what this article is, and I'm going to share my screen if I know how to do that. Share sound, shares. And I'm going to show you this article. So here's my Safe Libraries blog, where I've been writing now for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that, even though I've been in this for longer. I just started this about 15 years ago. This is the latest thing that I wrote. I called it "Librarians Attempt to Legislate 1960s Radical View That Age is Not Morally Relevant." And this is important to you all now. By the way, you Tennessee people, tomorrow and the next 2 days, I believe the Tennessee Library Association is having its annual meeting in Memphis. So if you want to wander your way over to Memphis and go inside there, you will see things that will just, well, unbelievable things. You'll find out for yourselves. So head on down to Memphis. Now, so what's basically going on is that librarians are trying to pass legislation to block parents from complaining about these books at all. Just take it out of the forum. It's gone. The legislation is going to be called something like the Right to Read Act. And it's going to say you have the right to read in schools. Schools have the right to read books that are about diversity and inclusion, and parents cannot do anything to remove them. So it's going to take away our rights. The American Library Association is working on this legislation to take away our rights to challenge these books. They don't care about the First Amendment right to freedom of redress from your government. They don't care about the United States Supreme Court that says that educationally unsuitable material may be removed from schools immediately. They just don't care. The point is to make sure as many kids as possible have these books that were just shown that I had to cover my eyes because they were just that bad. I really can't believe this stuff is in school books, but that's the way it is now. And it is that way because of the American Library Association. They put that word age into their Library Bill of Rights. Now they make sure kids see everything because of that. But what this article, and here's an example of legislation right on my screen. This one here is from in Illinois, where the American Library Association is based. This is part of the legislation. They want to adopt the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights that indicates materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval, la-di-da-di-da, and that prohibits the practice of banning specific books or resources. So they're literally building the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights into the legislation that's what they want to become law. All parents will lose all rights to challenge any books if that happens. Where does this come from? That's what this article is written about. I'm going to show where this comes from because it comes from some 1960s radicals. Let me see if I can find that graphic. I think it was number 13. 1960s radicals decided to, okay, maybe it's 15. There it is. Let's see if I can make it bigger somehow. Okay, I can't. 1960s radicals decided that it was not, it was violating the equality of rights between adults and children for libraries to have like a children's books and adults books. It violates their rights. It's not a librarian's place to make that decision. A radical sociologist named Edgar Friedenberg just argued that at the American Library Association's annual conference meeting. And the librarians all said, with surprising unanimity of support, that age is not a morally relevant factor. And so they inserted the word age into the text of the Library Bill of Rights. So basically what we have here is that this Marxist idea was inserted into the Library Bill of Rights. It's now spread all these books we see across America. And now the American Library Association wants to codify it as law. This is a major danger. All right, that's what this article is about. So let me go up and talk about it a little bit more. I recommend that you contact me and ask me for the full copy of this thing because it's kind of shocking when you see it for yourself. All right. So let's read about what I'm doing. Indeed, the ultimate way to stop this, by the way, is to get on school library boards and school boards. Remove all references to the Library Bill of Rights. Stop any librarian interaction whatsoever with any current library association, including in Tennessee. Then legally remove all educationally unsuitable material from the schools. The way it used to be before librarians imposed their made-up rules on everyone. It's the librarians who are the true minority, not the parents. All right, so I learned about this story on the American Library Association's attempt to legislate this 1960s radical view. Right here, just a few days ago, from Illinois Seeks a Library Pledge Against Banned Books. So the actual legislation makes it clear as day that the Library Bill of Rights is to be codified into law. All right. So there's the law. Here's links. So you can click on this stuff and see this law for yourself. Shows you the text. They want to adopt the Library Association's Bill of Rights. I mean, they just want to just put in the law and just adopt their Bill of Rights like it's some kind of a Bill of Rights. It's not a Bill of Rights. It's a nothing. I'm going to show you it's a nothing in a moment. All right. So let's look at this general overview of this Library Bill of Rights. Here's the, by the way, here is the Library Bill of Rights. I don't know if you can see that. right here, it says a person's right to use a library should not be denied or abridged because of origin, age, background, or views. Like 5, like it's an Article 5, like the real Bill of Rights. You know, they want you to think that that they're really important people and you must obey them. That's what it is. So that's how that happened. And the word age got inserted in 1967 or whatever like that, and then reaffirmed a few years later. All right. So I want to explain to you how this happened. Then you'll know that why this legislation must be defeated by any means, or the sexualization and indoctrination of school children will be set in stone. There won't be any means by which to stop this. All right. So that's what's going to happen. So first, let me say that the American Library Association nowadays is an out and open Marxist organization. I've written about it here. You can read, there's links, you can see this stuff for yourself. The lady was just awarded, I think she's right over here in my picture. There she is. She was just selected as the president of the American. She said, "Hey, I'm Marxist, and I'm now the American Library president. I couldn't be happier. I'm going to wield my power to change what's going on in libraries." It's so great when Marxists wield power. Marxists wield power. It usually ends up in millions of dead people, but we'll just overlook that for right now. Second, at least one court has already ruled that the Library Bill of Rights has no meaning in law. Exactly why the ALA wants it codified, right? Because it doesn't mean anything. So they're going to try to make it mean something by get this law passed. So that case said, this case of Berry versus Yosemite Community College District. However, the Code of Ethics of the Library Bill of Rights is not a federal statute, but is promulgated by the American Library Association. The Library Bill of Rights is an unambiguous statement of principles that should govern the service of all libraries. While the documents represent the policies of the American Library Association, there is nothing to indicate that there would be a private cause of action based on a violation. It means nothing in the law. It's just what the librarians made up. In fact, it's an aspirational creed for librarians that should not be applied generally via law. Here's another writer, Shirley Wigand, who said in Library Trends from 1996. See, I've been at this for a long time. This creed, albeit lacking in legal support, might provide inspiration to library professionals and would provide them with a standard which goes beyond First Amendment mandate. It would be incorporated into the employment contract for library professionals, but it would not represent the current state of legal principles. Yeah, for a good reason. Fourth, at least one library has already removed from its policies all references to the Library Bill of Rights, precisely because its inclusion of the word age is so harmful to the children of the community. All right. So that was in a Wyoming library in Gillette, Wyoming, actually. The Campbell County Public Library will no longer have any association with, nor be associated with, the American Library Association, ALA, its affiliate organizations, subdivisions, or subsidiaries thereof. No CCPL public funding will be used for any membership, training, informational services, or events sponsored by the aforementioned groups or any groups associated with them. CCPL policies will be adjusted to reflect that. This is what you need to do. You need to get this out of your libraries, folks. Just wipe out this Library Bill of Rights. It's the camel's nose under the tent of sexualizing children, because it says that you can't keep this stuff from children because of age discrimination. Get rid of that. They made this stuff up. It has nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with the Supreme Court, common sense, or community standards, or the way things used to be. It was just made up. Fifth and lastly, it's important to know that the American Library Association has admitted it knows certain materials in schools are sexually inappropriate for minors. It knows they're sexually inappropriate for minors, but it retrains librarians to, get this word, reframe such material, targeting such material as diversity and inclusion, before such matters even get to legislators. Yes, the American Library Association is specifically targeting legislators for misinformation. And here we are, ALA is trying to get legislation passed to codify its Library Bill of Rights. All right. So this is what she says, but ultimately, we find that the thing, when I say she, this is the leader of the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom and the Freedom to Read Foundation. The leader giving training to librarians tells them, but ultimately we found that the thing that needs to happen most, and it needs to happen before these bills are introduced, is sustained messaging. That's her, not mine, that reframes this issue, that takes it away from the idea that these are inappropriate for minors or sexually inappropriate for minors, and promotes them as diverse materials and programming that are about inclusion, fairness, and protection of everybody's right to see themselves and their families reflected in the books of the public library. You know what? That's shocking. It's more shocking to watch it. Let's watch it.
But ultimately, we found that the thing that needs to happen most, and it needs to happen before these bills are introduced, is sustained messaging that reframes this issue, that takes it away from the idea that these are inappropriate for minors or sexually inappropriate for minors, and promote them as diverse materials and programming that are about inclusion, fairness, and the protection of everybody's right to see themselves and their families reflected in the books in the public library.
Unbelievable, right? So librarians know this material is inappropriate for children, but they're still going to spread it just the same by reframing it, just fooling people. That's what it is. Now, these very same people want legislators to pass laws codifying this reframing of inappropriate material that violates the Board of Education versus PICO case, for example, as diversity and inclusion. It's truly diabolical to fool legislators into allowing librarians to continue to harm children by making this reframing the law of the land. So back to the Library Bill of Rights, and how did age get inserted? Well, a small group of librarians just decided to add the word age to their Library Bill of Rights that they previously made up. They were enamored when the anything goes by any age views of a 1960s radical sociologist named Edgar Friedenberg, who wanted equality of rights between the adult and child library users. So they added the word age. You see, before then, everyone knew you don't allow children access to inappropriate material. We all know it now, yet we just let librarians bully us into thinking it's a First Amendment right, when it isn't. Here is G. Van Fleet. I'll recommend you follow her on Twitter. Marxist and government schools now have a powerful ally, the American Library Association. It has elected a new president, Emily Drabinski, who describes herself as a Marxist lesbian. The ALA will now turn our libraries woke. As a librarian myself, I will be in the trenches fighting ALA. Everyone, please follow G. Van Fleet. To G. Van Fleet, who's experienced Marxist indoctrination firsthand in China, from the Chinese government, Friedenberg looks like a Marxist because he believes that parents have no authority over their children. That comes directly from the Marxist goal of abolition of family and from the Marxist goal of abolition of religion. When there's an absence of morality, there's no longer a difference between right and wrong. Therefore, anything goes in terms of books for children. All right. I say to see this article, Communist Attack on Parents. What you are seeing in school board meetings is part of the Marxist war strategy against the family. Why are school boards and propagandists in the media defending rapists and attacking parents? The sobering answer is that question is that the abolition of family is essentially to the successful infiltration of their ideology. If Marxists can abolish parental authority, the state can control the educational system and ultimately society. And that's what this legislation is all about, to get rid of parental authority. So this Marxist Edgar Friedenberg is the genesis of the word age in the Library Bill of Rights. And now the American Library Association, itself Marxist, wants to get the Library Bill of Rights codified nationally. Should we allow this? Should legislators agree to this? If they do, what does that say about them? But thanks to the out and open sexual indoctrination of school children by school librarians using the Library Bill of Rights as both a sword and shield, parents like us right here discussing this, parents have finally begun to wake up and have been successfully using Supreme Court cases such as Board of Education versus PICO to get genderqueer memoir by Maya Kobabe and All Boys Aren't Blue, a memoir manifesto by George M. Johnson, pulled from public schools. I met his mother, by the way, at a public library board meeting. She's very nice and very adorable and really loves and supports her son. And they let her speak longer than 2 minutes. Whatever. The American Library Association reacted by giving these books, because parents were getting them pulled from schools, awards, and creating Unite Against Book Bans to lie about the legal removal of educationally unsuitable material from public schools, and to cast the parents as a small minority of religious nuts. That's us. We're a small minority of religious nuts driven by dark money to take away the alleged right of students to read. All right? It's all projection. Part of Unite Against Book Bans involves legislative efforts, like asking your legislator loaded and deceptive questions, like, would you introduce or sponsor legislation that would prohibit government entities from banning books from local libraries and schools because of content, ideas, or viewpoints, right? They don't say because of the massively sexualized graphics or anything like that. No, they leave that out, right? Would you introduce or sponsor legislation that would protect librarians and educators for doing their job of providing a variety of age-appropriate reading materials? That's ridiculous. They've just said age is not a factor in their Library Bill of Rights. So now they're making it look like they care about age-appropriate reading material. Get out of here. So these are the actual, you can click on this and see this questionnaire yourself right from the Unite Against Books ban. Here's a graphic of it. Those push questions exactly mirror the very law ALA seeks to get passed in Illinois. What a coincidence. This legislation is so important to ALA that it's even funding school librarian Amanda Jones to sue parents for defamation. Hello, Amanda. And in return, Amanda Jones has asked her Louisiana legislature to pass laws to ban parents from challenging books. Another coincidence. So here I've written about her, and this is what I've said. I'm quoting her now. Moving forward, legislation is needed. This is Amanda Jones writing to her legislature. Legislation is needed to protect your constituents against these types of unfounded, vicious attacks. I hope you will not only speak up against their actions, but take action as a political leader to prevent this from continuing. All right. I myself have been named in a defamation lawsuit of another school librarian suing other parents. But I digress. And here's Roxbury High School librarian. This is in New Jersey, Roxana Caviano, and genderqueer. All right. So let's get to the meat of the matter. Heard of the right to read for school children in schools? It's a phantom right perpetrated by the American Library Association and other politically motivated groups, according to, and this is the article you must read, and ask me and I'll send you a copy for your own personal use only. There is no such thing as a banned book, censorship authority, and the school book controversies of the 1970s. American Political Thought 12, number 1, January 2023. All right, here's the abstract. What accounts for the persistence of book banning controversies in the United States? In Island Tree's district, versus PICO, also known as Board of Education versus PICO, the Supreme Court ruled that the book removal violates children's right to read. But school book challenges have only increased since then. I argue that that's Rita Koganson. I argue that Americans have been unable to put this controversy to rest because of a misleading narrative of censorship framed by the ALA, framed the PICO case, and has continued to frame the question since. That narrative depicted what is fundamentally a contest between competing adult authorities, which would be the educational professionals and the parents, as instead a contest between children and adults. By reconstructing the development of this narrative by young adult authors and professional educators in the 70s, I show that the invention of the children's right to read in this period sought to discredit the legitimate democratic authority of school boards over curricular decisions in a way that left the conflict simmering and unresolvable. And our schools are now flooded with all these books, and we're all here talking together about it. It's because of this. It's because of this Marxist word age inserted into the Library Bill of Rights. And now they want to have it codified nationwide, starting in Illinois, which is likely going to pass this illegal law. This article is outstanding in a number of ways. It's well written, well researched, and it sheds light rarely seen elsewhere about the scam ALA plays on the American public. I may not republish it, but I do have permission to share it. So ask me if you would like a copy. Here's what I learned from the article. All right. I learned there's no such thing as a banned book. The children's right to read was invented to discredit the legitimate democratic authority of school boards over curricular decisions. Right? I learned that newspapers always target parents in book challenge cases, yet they never raise the issue of how the inappropriate books got into the library in the first place. Censorship is always the issue, never the initial selection of the material. Why is that? Right? The right in book challenges is always the student's right to read, rather than how such a book was selected in the first place. Right? Like, why are these schools having all these sexually inappropriate books? Where did William Shakespeare go? All right. I have resources from the American Society of Library Services to Children, which is part of the ALA, talking about how Shakespeare is a dead white guy and he doesn't relate to these people anymore. So they got to get rid of the dead white guys and replace it with, street literature, basically this racist drivel. This is why people are getting these kinds of books, because these librarians are the ones who have just decided to kind of make it happen. So the issue of book selection in the first place is never talked about. All right. So everyone's always critical of the parents and us who challenge these books. No one looks at the motives of the educators who select these works and end up being challenged. So parents and school boards suffer high scrutiny while everyone overlooks the motives and the authority of the writers and the educators and librarians in generating and assigning this controversial work. So now this University of Houston professor, Rita Koganson, is going to correct that shortfall. So I'm going to, as I continue to read this, I hope this is going to open up everybody's eyes as to the game being played here and why we should basically stop playing the game, expose it for what it is, and get rid of every influence of this that you can possibly do it, even if it means you yourself have to run for school boards to make it happen, because the librarians aren't going to roll over for you. They just keep ramping it up. All right. So basically, young adult or YA literature became a vehicle for professional educators to counter the reticent child rearing practices of families and communities by treating them as obstacles to their children's healthy development. Sound familiar with all this gender transitions going on without parental involvement? It's kind of the same deal, right? This young adult literature, YA Lit, became a vehicle for professional educators to counter the parents and the families, making them an obstacle to a child's healthy development, in their view. All right. So YA authors hopped on American Library Association censorship train and positioned themselves as alternative sources of education against families. Then when their books got challenged, quote, they transformed their case for promoting YA books through library and curricular selection into a case for students' rights to read them, thereby obscuring their own pedagogical purposes behind rights claims. Authors of YA books, right? So I have all these different things highlighted here, but I've summarized them here so far. Authors of YA books understood their work as an intervention into child rearing and a subversion of reticent parents unwilling to expose their children to controversial sexual and social issues. I mean, who are these people who think they can do this? Like YA writers, educators saw their efforts in competition with those of parents and communities, if not in outright opposition to them. Both writers and educators viewed parents as failing to equip their children with updated views about sexuality and hot-button issues, and saw YA books in school libraries and curricula as a means to counteract them. You see, the problem is you, parents. You haven't shown your young children about butt plugs. This is your problem. They need to learn about butt plugs because they're going to get them sooner or later. So they might as well learn them in a safe environment of a school. Because us YA authors and us librarians and teachers know better than you do, because you won't introduce your children to butt plugs. Continuing on, having forged a strategic alliance, YA writers and professional educators transformed their battle for educational authority against parents into a claim about the rights of children against censorship, not only obscuring the nature of the conflict, but also undermining their own pedagogical authority in the process. In the 1970s, there never was any book banning, right? It was, at least in schools, all right? It was just, in fact, the last book banning in the United States was 1963. It was just a contest between educators and writers and parents and communities. The tussle between the book banners and the book selectors is the heart of the problem. This made-up right to read just obscured this tussle. It was conceived as a means of discrediting parental dissent and shielding educators from community opposition. This rights talk is all made up for writers and educators and librarians to fool people. All right? A series of questionable assumptions about family life and children's experiences was used to justify the entire YA genre, such as the assumption that, quote, parents were unjustifiably concealing information from their parents, from their children. Author Judy Blume was part of the problem. YA books, let's let me say that again. Author Judy Blume was part of the problem. She's decided that she knew better than parents what the kids needed. She began to write books for them, and the books would just be about all sorts of topics that parents supposedly didn't want their kids to know about. She felt great about that because she knew better than you parents. YA books do not so much reveal the facts of life to adolescents as transform the facts of life from peripheral eventualities into the defining cultural dramas of adolescence. Only once YA books had popularized this cultural script as the healthy way to grow up and made the case for the necessity of openness and publicity around these issues, could parental reticence about them be questioned and overruled on the grounds that it impeded healthy development? You people should read this article for yourselves. YA book authors were averse to moralizing. Parents who didn't want to reveal adult secrets were now downright negligent. Refusing to moralize allowed YA authors to overcome their distance from readers and claim to relate to them better than their parents. Indeed, it was not unusual for journalists to describe YA authors as children, right? So they're setting up the YA authors to be childlike so that, you know, we can trust their books for our children because they understand children better. All right. That's what's going on here. But writers could not triumph over parental objections to their work on the authority of their kinship with children alone. They needed affirmation and assistance from another set of authoritative parents, the teachers and librarians. Because the primary buyers of YA books were schools and libraries, young novelists and librarians have a common cause. We want the attention of the newest generation, this guy says in something written in 1973. This is what's going on. This is why we're all here. And then I have this note. It says, because I'm preparing for this Zoom meeting that I'm talking to you about now, I'll have to finish the text in the future. So I'm basically summarizing the graphics. So I'm going to look at the graphics now and summarize to you what they are. You know, this takes a lot of work to do this kind of stuff, frankly. We all know that, right? It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. And we do this by ourselves as adults, as parents, in between our full-time jobs and taking care of our families. This is what we do. So forgive me if this is not done. Meantime, the American Library Association, they're funded by George Soros Open Society. They're funded by the Mellon Foundation. They just got $5.5 million or was it? No. I'm sorry. Maybe it was $50.5 million. I forget which now. This is who us parents are up against, right? And you will see when you look at their Unite Against Book Bans that they talk about how there's dark money from Moms for Liberty for doing what we're doing. I promise you, there is zero dark money that I'm getting or anybody else is getting here. We just do this in our spare time. My website would be way slicker and better looking if I were getting dark money from something, but I'm not. So I'm going to have to go off script here and start to tell you what I'm seeing here. Professional organizations like the American Library Association and the National Coalition of Teachers of English conceived legal and media strategies to defend against challenges from parents, while educators themselves outlined the substantive arguments for adopting the YA books. All right. They just made this stuff up. You know, we know better. Communities know better. Our school boards know better. But that wasn't good enough for these library associations and the teachers associations. They have to collude together on how to keep kids reading this stuff. Defenses of YA books by educators and librarians converged on two main arguments. One, the books functioned as a kind of low door through which remedial students could enter the wider world of reading, right? Out goes Shakespeare and all the books that make you think, and in comes Fun Home, so you can watch the pictures and see the people having close-up sex with each other. That clearly attracts more students to read. There's your low door that they all want to follow, right? Get rid of that other stuff nobody's interested in and start reading Fun Home and Genderqueer and Lawn Boy and books like that. All right. The other is that second, they answered students' felt needs. Right here we go with the lived experiences Marxism again, by exposing them to important social issues, important to them, that were developmentally necessary for children to confront. All right. So they had surveys to find out, what books kids really were wanted for themselves. And the results of the surveys show that most kids wanted books that were about film adaptations like Jaws and The Exorcist and The Godfather, right? And in the second most came in the YA fiction. Well, that didn't sit well with the educators and the librarians, so they kind of just lied about that and just and said, even in their effort to simply reflect and represent children's desires against moralism and protection of their parents, educators slipped back into shaping those desires while claiming to speak for children against uncomprehending parents. They both writers and educators understood their pedagogical purposes in opposition to parental reticence. Now the author is going to talk about the right to read. All right. How did educators transmute the problem of authority over book selection into a question of children's right to read? The rhetoric of censorship and book banning only makes sense if there truly exists a right to read in the first place, right? So they just made up the right to read, then they talk about censorship and made it a child versus adult thing, instead of what it really is. It really is us. We know what's appropriate for our children. We select people for our school boards who supposedly know what's appropriate for children generally. And that's the way it used to be. And it was these authors and these librarians who changed that. So the professional associations of librarians and educators took strong official positions against the removal of controversial books quite early on. The ALA's Library Bill of Rights was drafted in response to anti-communist and anti-obscenity censorship pressures against adult library materials, dates back to 1939. But in the 60s, when the challenges to materials for minors came up, the ALA simply extended its standing defense of reading rights to children by adding the word age to the protected categories of library users in the Library Bill of Rights of 1967, and approved a separate free access to libraries for minors in 1972. What is notable about these statements, I think this might be the last slide I'll read. There's many more. What is notable about these statements is their uncompromising assertion of a right to read and intellectual freedom for children long before there was any right considered by the courts. The former director of the ALA's Office for Intellectual Freedom pointed out that the addition of age to the Library Bill of Rights was, quote, one instance in which the library profession acted well in advance of public opinion, which rather understates its distance from mainstream views. They made this stuff up. At the pre-conference, the ALA's annual meeting in 1967 that approved the revision, the radical sociologist Edgar Friedenberg argued for complete equality of rights between children and adult library users. Without it, he said, the library is just one more place where the kids are taught they are second-class citizens. They learn this not only from the books pressed upon them by helpful librarians, but even more so from the very atmosphere of the place. Well, the chair of the ALA's Intellectual Freedom Committee was impressed by the, quote, surprising unanimity of support for Friedenberg's argument that, as he paraphrased it, intellectual freedom was an inalienable right and that age is not a morally relevant factor, and that adults have themselves no right to determine for youth access to ideas. And he moved to assert age into the text of the Library Bill of Rights. And that's how it got in there, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we're all here, because they took this Marxist guy's statement about age and his views that everything is equal for children and adults, when we all know that's wrong. The Supreme Court knows it's wrong. Community standards knows it's wrong. Common sense knows it's wrong. And past practices for decades and all over the world knows it's wrong. Put it in the Library Bill of Rights. Now these books are spread throughout America for this reason. And now the American Library Association is on the verge of getting it codified into law. All right. I highly recommend you read the rest of these things about the right to read in courts, where this all came up with, how they came up with this stuff, and other cases that were involved. And as these controversies continue, what's going on now? Okay, but lastly, she concludes by saying, to appeal to a phantom right of children to read is to short circuit the democratic competition that our public educational system is designed around. That's exactly what the American Library Association is doing with this legislation. They want to short circuit the entire educational system and just push their Marxist views on America, just like that, right? So for educators, sacrificing their authority to the rhetoric of rights is a high price to pay for a losing strategy. Okay, there you go. This is my tweet about what I was saying here. You can find it and tweet it and retweet it if you like. I've been warning people, librarians want legislation to sexualize school kids and stop parents from raising the alarm. This story here shows that ALA is starting in its home state to pass just such legislation. It's coming, folks. Are you going to stop it? Okay. So that is kind of the end for right now of the presentation. I guess I'm open to questions.
Any questions?
Hey, Dan, do you have any good strategies on how we might be able to basically go against the ALA exposing, I mean, we're exposing it now with this video, obviously, but have you come across anything that might be a little bit more direct of a hit?
Yes. I'll show it to you now. I'm going to scroll up. On my website, I have something on the right here called Big Picture. And underneath that, I have something called Must Reads. The first must read is this detailed guide for parents and legislators. This detailed guide is from an attorney named Stuart Baggish, who spells out details on how to stop the indoctrination of children in schools and libraries, providing a guide for legislators and parents on what to do about obscenity, drag queen story hour, the 1619 Project, and more. His guidance will surprise you, yet it is 100% on target. For example, he says, don't go against obscenity. In fact, the reason why librarians like to talk about obscenity and how Genderqueer is not an obscene book is because they know it's a loser for us parents. There's going to be no case that any book is ever going to be ruled as obscenity that's in a public school. They just don't have obscenity in a public school. It is so hard to prove obscenity. It even has to go to a court to be adjudged as obscene. So you'll never get a book removed because of obscenity. That's why the librarians keep talking about it. That's why they say, no, we've reviewed this thing as a whole and it's not obscene. Because they know that's not the standard, but they want to fool you. The standard is not California versus Miller obscenity. It is Board of Education versus PICO, educational unsuitability, and pervasively vulgar. So I highly recommend you go down to my website and you click on those must reads and you get this guide on how to do this. This guide also includes something really good. You can go after the licenses of these librarians and teachers, because when you just go after the school, they get protected by, the unlimited public funding that goes against you. But when you go after their licenses, now you're going against their ability to teach or to be a librarian. And now they have to think twice before they decide to sexualize your children. Okay, so somewhere in here, Stuart Baggish will be discussing about both this obscenity issue and how to go against their licenses to take out these people who are not going to stop sexualizing our children. Does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, that's actually pretty amazing. I've been wondering how many of these people I've been going against are members of the ALA, but I don't think that they list their membership role. I don't think Moms for Liberty does either. So, I mean, like, I'm not mad about it, but it would help a lot to know how many of these people, especially in our book review committee, how many of them sit as members of the ALA. That would be good to know as well.
Well, just take their names and do a search. Let's say you, somebody's name like Amanda Jones, okay? And then you say site:/ALA.org or libraryjournal.com or American Libraries Magazine, whatever. And you say enter, and it brings up all this stuff. And here's all sorts of stuff. Amanda Jones receives the AASL Intellectual Freedom Award. Yeah, because she's defending this stuff, right? They give awards to these people and she's suing. So they want to help her out, bring her notoriety, good notoriety, whatever they call that. It's the opposite of defamation. She's really, her career is really blossoming right now ever since she filed this defamation suit. So this is how you can find these people and see where they are. And don't forget your state library association. So find out what that URL is and search on that one as well too.
Okay.
All right. So it's just put in quotes or not, and then just say site:/TNLA.org or whatever it is. And you'll be able to find these things on these sites.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. You can also, my phone number, if you go to my About Me page, I think my phone number is listed. Here's my About Me page. That's my actual phone number. Here's my actual phone. You could call it like right now and I've talked to you. I'm in New Jersey, just be aware of that. So that's Eastern time. I'll be happy to talk with any of you for any length of time about anything. And, download 25 years worth of information into a 15-minute phone call.
Well, that is amazing, Dan. Your depth of knowledge and your research, it shows. And I know you've just blown a lot of minds tonight.
Yeah, here I am in the New York Post for opposing these radical librarians, especially this Emily Drabinski person here. There I am in front of the Brooklyn Public Library, a beautiful library with the same books that we all are challenging. Other people are now, these are librarians who are for this stuff, right? They block me on Twitter, by the way. That's just what they do. So anyway, yeah, I'd be happy to help any of you in any way that I can figure out how I can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Let me say something else interesting. I have this thing here called guest posts. Guest posts is, I think, should be super interesting because it's people coming to me who are afraid to speak out publicly for losing their jobs, but want other people to know. So I have library school students writing to me, school professors writing to me, school librarians, library directors, librarians writing to me to publish things like this library warns parents and librarians about sexualization of children. And how the Texas Library Association is criticizing an effort to protect the kids. Here's a lady who said she can't stand all the politically correct woke garbage that goes on in library schools. They don't teach librarianship anymore. They just teach Marxism. So she got out. Here's a library talks about the Banned Books Week hustle and what a hoax that is, right? Here's a library director to tell me that one kid got killed because of the recommendation of the American Library Association. I really think you ought to take a look at this stuff. More things are coming in that I haven't even published yet, because people are starting to see this as a possible platform for where they can get their words out. And I think you'll find that this material is just as useful for you as it was cathartic for these people.
That was another thing I was going to mention was Banned Book Week. I don't know if anybody else has their school districts celebrating Banned Book Week once a year. It's in September. Actually, in the state of Tennessee, it's around the same time as our, what's it called? The Celebrate Freedom Week, that we have a new bill that was passed celebrating the Constitution. So I think Moms for Liberty will be working extra hard this coming September and pushing the Constitution versus Banned Book Week. But we've been highlighting it especially since Wilson County Schools removed 2 books, and then one of our school board representatives decided that that was banning books. And so she's basically labeling it as something that they are encouraging kids to read one week out of the year. So they've kind of stepped in it, I think, a little bit with the Banned Book Week thing, but it has slogans like I read dangerously and things of that nature, encouraging kids to kind of go after that forbidden fruit, not really acknowledging what is in the books and why they're being challenged. But if you go to the ALA website, you'll see that the majority of them are being challenged because of sexually explicit content. They say it out loud, and they're not afraid to say it, but I don't know if they're mentioning that part in the schools. So
Right.
May I?
Yes.
I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. I had some extensive dealings with Washington Post reporter named Ms. Reshma Kirpalani. And in my dealings with her, which was about an hour on the phone, I recognized she was preparing a video report and having contact with a lot of different Moms for Liberty chapters throughout Florida and elsewhere. I went and looked up some of her prior work. Being a Washington Post reporter, I didn't expect to be pleased. I was unsurprised by the extent of how damaged of a soul she actually is. She is a woman, not sure about her sexuality. It's not important to me at all, but she has no children. And in our conversation, she said, "Why do you believe that pornography would have a harmful effect on a child?" And I was speechless, as I often am when speaking with Marxists. So I made the active decision. I wrote her back a nice letter after we spoke, and she kind of invited herself to come visit me in Florida and have further video conferencing and interviewing and set up a film crew. And I declined. Said, I don't have any trust that you or your editors will bring attention to the scale of the problem or any potential solution. Meanwhile, I just learned from all my peers here in Florida, other Moms for Liberty chapters, Indian River County, Volusia, and Escambia County, that they had extensive video interviews with her. And there's going to be some kind of god-awful report coming out from this young woman very soon, where she will paint us all as anti-everything, phobic of everything. I had a discussion with her about the keyword phobia. If I was, for example, homophobic, then I would not stand up in a crowd likely to be filled with homosexuals and declare myself as contrary to their mission. That flies in the face of the definition of a fear. If you're willing to stand up and speak your piece, that's not fear, that's something else. If you want to call me a hater, go for it, but pick a new word. And the same with the transphobia and the anyphobia, whatever. When that didn't work, they called me crazy, stupid, racist, blah, 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 a creep, a goon, a pedophile. They've got all kinds of great words, but addressing the content of the books, it almost never comes up. And most recently, I had challenged the graphic novel version of Anne Frank's diary because it's gross. And I got a call from Andrew Lapine from the Jewish Telegraph Agency, which is a left-leaning Marxist Jewish kind of thing. And I'm a Jewish man. Okay. So he wanted to pay.
Hey, Dan, do you have any final comments?
Any final comments? We must get ourselves onto school boards and library boards. That is the number one way that we're going to change this.
Awesome. Well, we're working on it in Williamson County and Tennessee.
That's it. That's when you can do things like I have in my article, that library in Gillette, Wyoming. They got the new people in, they got rid of the ALA, they stopped sending people there, spending any money on them, got rid of the Library Bill of Rights. That's how you do it.
All right.
Do you think we could push for the content ratings moving forward, or do you think that that's a lost cause for books?
I have written on this because I presented the views of other people. In this case, this one was Stacy Langton, and she wrote about book labeling, which is different than book ratings. She thinks that books could be labeled. That's going to be I think you could do it. Where am I going with this? It can be done. You're going to get a lot of stiff opposition. I think it would apply best into public schools as opposed to public libraries, because in public libraries, you can sort of have anything goes. Not really, but basically. In public schools, however, you definitely do have more control over things. And I think if you were to rate these books, somehow it would be easier, to get them removed if they're really, really terrible, like genderqueer should not be in a public school setting. I don't even know why the adult kids need to read. I can guarantee you that if a school has these books and they say just for the 11th and 12th graders, I can guarantee you that's just what they're saying. And they're actually giving the books behind the backs to all the other kids because this is what librarians do. It's what when they get on their little Facebook groups and they think nobody's watching, they say all sorts of things about how they violate parents' rights all the time and they go against them. So the real thing to do is get them out of the schools and not give the librarians a chance to lie to you and then sexualize your children. Because that's what they're all doing nowadays. They're actually trained to do this by the American Library Association and state library associations.
Right. Well, if you Courage is a Habit, their work on the American School Counselor Association has been entirely radicalized. And the goal of that is various indoctrinations. So
yep,
can't trust any NGO or association or
right.
We've got to be the wisest serpents in this.
Well, look, I agree with you 100%. Now, in 1 week, you're going to have Dr. James Lindsay on to talk about the Marxification of education. Right. And today I basically talked about the Marxification of libraries. Yep. All right. But you're going to learn from him, if nobody hasn't heard this yet, is that these Marx people, they don't care about education. Education is not the goal. It's literally not the goal. The goal is just to indoctrinate these people into perpetual revolution. That's what the whole goal of this stuff is. That's what we're going through. That's why the kids are getting the genderqueer books to read and the fun homes and things like that. They don't care that the kids aren't learning. They don't want them to have Shakespeare and actually learn to read and think. They don't care. It's not the goal.
Yep.
I forget where I was going with that, but your lessons here are really very good. Your whole thing that you got set up here and the different lessons you're going week after week and month after month is very good for people to know. And I think it's really helping them to get educated and to want to eventually act and start doing what needs to be done to stop this.
Well, thank you so much. That's all we can hope for. That's the greatest praise that we can receive. Because I think also, speaking of Marxism 101, that's next week, I see in my mind, there's the rock of Marxism, and then there's pillars underneath it. And there's got CRT, SEL, sexual content in the library, CSE, restorative justice. And
Right.
we have analyzed and examined all of those pillars. And so in this month of
Right.
April, now we're addressing what those pillars are holding up. So in American education.
You know, the American Library
where-
Association
Yeah,
the American Library Association bragged to the Biden White House about how librarians are better at indoctrinating students than our teachers, because teachers only get them for one class, whereas librarians get them for 6 years or whatever the case may be.
well, if you could send me that quote, that'd be great.
Sure.
Well, all right, we're going long, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you, Dan, that was amazing. And I'll be writing the library True False blog in the coming weeks, and I was drinking from a fire hose from your whole presentation, and that thing might be 20 pages long. I'm not gonna replay this because you already played it, but I did find it interesting that she mentioned GLAAD,
It needs to hap-
GLAAD, which is not, it didn't get its own post-it note in this pipeline, but GLAAD is, their whole mission is media relations and getting the gender ideology into mainstream media. So when you watch various TV shows across various platforms and you're like, wow, there's always, you know, a such and such and a such and such, and they track that religiously, and they publish it in a report every year, but they're all about media relations and pushing the gender and the LGBT agenda. And it's interesting that the American Library Association would point you to that. So
Well, the ALA is partners now with GLAAD and the American Federation for Teachers and GLSEN and the Americans
Wow.
United for Church and Separation of Church and State and all these kinds of crazy groups. All right. You just go to Unite Against Book Bans, their website. That's the ALA's website. Click on partners and you'll see all these partners. They're out now all working together. This is why you see Randy Weingartner going out there saying, banned books are bad. We have to get rid of banned books. Yeah, because she's part of the same team trying to sexualize kids, led by the American Library Association. So you're absolutely right about these ties. Now they're direct ties under Unite Against Book Bans.
So we don't have the legislative update today, which is good because we're running long. Basically, instead of presenting on the 3 library bills, 2 passed last year and 1 failed. And they did change the legal landscape for parents a little bit in Tennessee, but we're going to wait and see how this current session wraps up. And then we'll have just a short presentation on what our parental rights are under Tennessee Code annotated. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll certainly announce it and post it. And then, as usual, you can find all the things that we talked about, all the links that were mentioned, and the blog and our Library 101 and the recording of this program, Library 102. It'll all be under the library books toolkit in our resource library on our website. And then again, this is what's on the agenda for March. It's not complete yet, but it will be complete. And then we actually assessed the library content for Williamson County Schools as a 7 to 8. And that is because some schools are not so bad and some schools are all the way over at a 9. So we kind of took an average between what we're seeing across the spectrum of Williamson County schools. There's our website. Follow us on social media. If you find our work of value, then please consider a donation. That is directly what directly funds the website, because that's not free. And then also what funds, bringing the speakers here and having them present. And these are just, the top-notch speakers in their field and on their topic, and our efforts to educate parents, because the more you know, the more power you have to advocate for your child and to affect change, because the parent is really the true advocate for the child. I can't advocate for anyone else's child. It's got to be the parent that arms themselves with that information and goes forward with it. Because when you sit down with these administrators, because when you sit down to go talk to your school, you're more than likely to get a bureaucrat over a teacher. And chances are, if you've kept up with the information that we've been putting out, you're far more educated on these topics than they are. And I want to make a quick point too that I almost forgot about. I did an interview with a UK news crew a week or two ago. And they talked about the standards of care for, okay, before we hover on that slide, the standards of care for gender, gender affirming care. And I asked her, I'm like, okay, well, do you know where the origin of gender ideologies? And she got a deer in the headlights, like, no. And I said, do you know what year it started? No. Do you know who it started with? No. Have you ever heard of the Ryman twins? No. Have you heard of John Money? No. Have you heard of the Johns Hopkins 30-year period of, sanity and its transgender clinic? Did you hear about the Canadian doctor? And she says, no. I'm like, well, let me tell you. So the point is, these activists that are pushing this stuff, most of them are useful idiots, and arm yourself with knowledge so that you can shine the light where it needs to be shined. And then also to point out, I'm going to go back to the slide. It's obscene, it's graphic. I'm sorry to put it back up, but I need to point out one thing. When they were talking about this issue, God, it's so hard to look at. Sorry. I showed them this slide, and they were, they're far left and they're ready to defend all of these things and call me a book banner. And so I pulled out, this book, and I showed them these pages, and you could see them kind of visibly taken aback, and they're, in their British voice, were like, oh, well, that's quite rude, isn't it? I'm like, yes, it is. But they actually found something to defend, and where my pointer is right here. It's a heads up about how pornography is performance sex, and to maybe adjust your expectations when you actually have it. And they said, wasn't that a helpful bit of information for the kids to have, that pornography is just performance sex and they should adjust their expectations? And I was like, that's the public service announcement that redeems all of this, for kids. And then she kind of realized the absolute insanity of what she said, and she backed off. But they actually tried to defend that book. And that is how far these leftists will go when you challenge their ideology. It's insane. So hold the line, and just speak truth to power. I'm looking for any last minute questions. I don't see any. So thank you everybody for joining. It went pretty long today, but I appreciate you hanging with us. We're gonna get this uploaded to YouTube and publish it, and then it'll be where all of these are in our resource library in the library toolkit. So
Great, I'll get sued again.
Thank you to Hen. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you.